Good morning, and thank you for joining us on our webinar today, where we'll be decoding global talent and looking at how COVID-19 is changing workforce mobility. My name is Orla Moran, and I'm General Manager of IrishJobs.ie. Everyone here today knows only too well how COVID-19 has changed how we work. But today, we'll be presenting new international research that shines a light on how the pandemic has reshaped talent mobility. It's quality data that will provide businesses and organisations with the insights needed to make strategic, informed recruitment decisions in this new working world. I'm joined here this morning by Kate Kavanagh, the Managing Director of the network. Kate, it's great to have you here this morning, presenting from the UK. So let's have a quick run through of our agenda this morning. We'll start with the data behind the research, followed by an overview of which countries and cities respondents rank as their top choices. We'll then look at how Ireland ranks as a destination, while also hearing about where Irish people would like to go. Finally, we'll look at the opportunity remote working can bring and wrap up with a Q&A session on what remote working means for talent acquisition. Kate, it's over to you now, and perhaps you can start by telling our audience a little bit more about the network, Boston Consulting Group, and the overall research.
Thanks very much, Orla. It's great to be here, and thank you very much for having me here today and for Irish Jobs' great support with this research. So I joined the network team in April last year, so I'm almost a year in my new role. And who are the network? So the network was actually founded in 2002 by Stepstone and Total Jobs. And we're a global advertising alliance with 60 partners across 138 countries, enabling recruiters to reach global candidates through one local solution, offering convenience, coverage, a single point of contact, and a single currency invoice. Our mission is to provide a go-to and unique solution to enhance the businesses of our clients. Irish Jobs, as you know, have been a long-time valued member of the network, and you've been helping companies in Ireland recruit internationally for over 15 years. Irish Jobs has actually taken part in the Global Talent Survey 3 times now, so thank you for that. And who are Boston Consulting Group, or BCG? So they're a management consultancy operating in over 50 countries worldwide, working with some of the largest corporations in the world. And we're honoured to be working with them again. So we first started working with BCG in 2014, and this is the 3rd report that we've published together. And the feedback so far has been that this has been by far and away our most valuable collaboration to date. And when we started discussing this project in May last year, we were heavily focused on the impact of COVID on mobility. But then we took a step back and considered the fact that it wasn't just COVID last year that majorly impacted us. We also experienced a stark reminder of our climate crisis in January 2020. Then we experienced a social, health and economic crisis. All of these factors have played a major role in shaping our new world of work. So let me give you an overview of the scale of this research. So we have run the world's largest survey on the workforce impact of the 2020 crisis, looking at a range of topics from mobility, remote working to sustainability and diversity. We've had over 200,000 responses in 190 countries. Our initial goal was actually to reach 100,000 responses, so we far exceeded that. The survey went live in October 2020, and it was live for 6 weeks across the globe in over 25 languages. There'll be 3 reports from this research. The first will be looking at global mobility, which we'll talk through today. The second one, which will look at changing preferences and models of work, which will be released at the end of March. And the final report, which will be released in April, will look at people's career prospects, how they feel about reskilling, and also their expectations in the world of work.
Thanks very much, Kate. So maybe you can shine a light for us on the Irish data.
I'd be happy to. So Of the 208,000 global responses, we had 824 responses in Ireland. We have an almost even split between male and female, and the age range of respondents is between 25 to 50 years of age. Now, this is slightly different to the global sample. If we look at the global data and in the global report, you'll see that the age range is predominantly between 20 to 40 years of age. Almost 3/4 of the respondents in Ireland have a university degree, means that this is a really highly educated sample of respondents. And also respondents come from a range of industries with a weighting towards healthcare, technology, consumer products and services, and travel and tourism. And also 75% of the respondents are actually living in Ireland now, with 25% living overseas.
Wow, that's quite an impressive and significant piece of research. Perhaps you might take us through the findings, starting with the global picture, and then we could move on to Ireland.
Of course. So this is really interesting. So the first thing we'll look at is the top 10 countries. So this first slide gives us an overview of the top 10 most attractive countries that candidates would move to for work and how this differs from previous years. So we have seen a reordering of the top 10 most attractive countries, which is very interesting. So Canada is now #1 choice for foreign workers, and the US has fallen to second place for the first time in 8 years. This is possibly due to pandemic handling in both countries, and perhaps due to the fact that Canada is viewed as having a more open culture and a better social system. And then you can see strong pandemic management in New Zealand, Japan, and Singapore has seen them climbing in the rankings, with New Zealand and Singapore in the top 10 for the first time. Whereas on the other side, you've got many EU nations now seem to have lost their appeal. So Germany, for example, has fallen 2 places in this research, in spite of their strong pandemic management. But they appear to have been tarnished by the very high rates in Europe, and also a pullback from their previously strong support for immigration. And Italy, Spain, and France have fallen, and now only France remains on the list today. One of the really surprising things we saw is South Korea. So they're not in the top 10 list. However, South Korea was in 2014, they were in 37th place. And then in 2018, they jumped to 24th place. And now they're in 12th position. So if you think of this is a country whose language isn't widely spoken, but it really shows the importance that public health is to today's workers and how important that is to them in the world of work.
Yeah, certainly it's not one that you would have expected to see appearing on the list, really, South Korea, is it?
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see Canada replacing the US as the top destination. That's new, as you say. And the UK obviously is dropping back. And New Zealand makes the top 10 for the first time. But obviously their handling of the pandemic has been fantastic.
Yeah, and there's a direct correlation between pandemic management and also what workers actually view as destinations of choice. And you can also see this now in the top 10 cities. So if we take a look at this slide, you can see the top 10 cities that workers find most attractive for relocation. So some really interesting changes here also. London has actually managed to retain its #1 spot. And it goes to show that the perception of London is very different to the UK as a whole, because as you saw on the previous slide, the UK is in 5th position. So clearly the aura and the fame of London and the opportunity it offers to workers has helped them to retain their top spot. And again, you can see that pandemic management has had an impact on this. So you've got 2 Asian cities now increasing in the rankings, whereas Barcelona and New York have declined in popularity. And again, perhaps due to the high numbers of cases in those countries. And it's also worth noting that the United Arab Emirates has succeeded in making its premier cities desirable destinations for workers, because we've got Dubai and Abu Dhabi in the list now, and Abu Dhabi wasn't even in the list in 2018. And then Amsterdam and Berlin, they've maintained strong positions. And this is perhaps due to the fact that they're seen as, hubs of innovation with dynamic startup scenes. It was surprising that there's no Canadian cities in this top 10 city list. So even though Canada is a number one country of choice, obviously the cities haven't featured. So I think that's quite interesting.
Very interesting. And yeah, the Asian and Middle Eastern cities are now among the top destinations. That's interesting. And then I suppose with Brexit doesn't seem to be having a negative effect on London, given that it remains number one.
Yeah, I think it's really clear here that London's kind of impervious to all these factors that are driving people away from some cities. But obviously London has that kind of attraction and that reputation that workers are really appealed to. So it's great for London.
And it obviously had its appeal for you, Kate.
Yeah. Well, I've been here a long time now. But if we take a deeper look into the Irish data and look at where Ireland and Dublin rank as destinations of choice for workers to relocate to, Ireland as a destination of choice has dropped back to 32nd position in the list from 26th in 2018. And Dublin has also seen a decline in popularity, moving into 36th position from 34th in 2018. So I think that the pandemic management has played a role in this, definitely. Ireland has done a really great job at containing the case numbers. Restrictions have been really tough in Ireland, and perhaps that has played a role in workers' preferences. When they're thinking about where they want to relocate to, perhaps that has been a deterrent to them. Having those kind of tough border restrictions in place.
Yeah, I think that it's disappointing to see it. It was ranked at like number 19 in 2014, and now it's dropped to 32. So that decline seems to have been continuing over the last number of years, which is it's sad to see. But I think it's probably understandable because we often feature in lists, lists as one of the top most expensive countries to live in. So it's probably off-putting for anybody wanting to locate here that the cost of living and the lack of I suppose affordable housing options as well are quite off-putting for people maybe.
I think, you know what, Orla, that's a really good point. And that's something I hadn't thought of, and just kind of made me think of it there. If you think of the age sample of the kind of the global sample of results in the age range between 20 and 40, that's probably something that's going to be really important to these workers in terms of how much it's going to cost. And that would definitely play a part, I think. And I think that's a really good point. So if we move on and have a look now at what talent wants to come to Ireland for work. So we can see that Ireland is most attractive to those working in engineering and technical jobs, IT and technology, and students. Ireland is also a destination of choice for workers in finance, healthcare, customer services. We already know from the global data that the candidates who are most likely to relocate are highly educated. So this is great for Ireland, as a lot of these candidates will undoubtedly be able to help with skills shortages. And when Irish employers start ramping up their recruitment in the coming months and years, they know that they have a talent pool of candidates outside of Ireland who are potentially willing to relocate.
Yeah, and I suppose we even see in Irish Jobs, we help a number of our customers recruit both locally and internationally, and that's why we're a partner of the network for so long. But we already have companies that we're helping to attract talent outside of Ireland. So do you know what? I think it's actually really good to see engineering and IT in the top 10 because they are skill sets that are in such high demand. And I suppose we can assume that it's the pull of multinationals really for these ambitious professionals wanting to come here, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's a great message for Irish employers, that they have that talent there ready. And then if we move on to the next slide, this gives us a picture of what countries find Ireland most attractive. So on the previous slide, we saw the professions who want to relocate to Ireland. And this is where these professionals would actually be coming from. So the UK is #1, followed by Spain, Italy, the US, and India. This is a really different picture compared to 2018, when Croatia, Lithuania, Brazil, India, and Nigeria chose Ireland as their destination of choice. And the UK wasn't even in the top 10. So there's a real opportunity for Irish employers here to reach highly skilled talent in these countries.
Yeah, it's not a surprise to see the UK #1 here, is it? I mean, English-speaking people can work in the UK without any visa requirements, thanks to the common travel area. Very interesting.
Exactly. And then if we can go a bit deeper into this is the great thing about this research. We can go really, really deep into specialist areas. So we can see the type, what these professionals are who are coming from the top 3 countries who want to choose Ireland as their destination of choice. So in the UK, these sit within management, engineering, and tech, and admin and secretarial. In Spain, it's also admin and secretarial, engineering, and tech, with the addition of students who would choose Ireland. And in Italy, consulting, IT and technology, and arts and creative workers would choose Ireland also.
That's that's unusual, isn't it? The Italian workers in the arts and creative sectors wanting to come here. Nice to see. So tell me, Kate, how do you think this information could then be used by recruiters?
I think as a recruiter, this kind of information is invaluable, because really what it's doing, it's just giving them an insight into labour markets outside of their borders, which means that when they're thinking about, recruiting for particular skill sets in particular locations in Ireland, they can think about, where they want to target these candidates, and just build their talent attraction strategy campaigns with this information in mind. So it's almost a helping hand, I would say.
Great. Thanks for that, Kate. So that's who wants to come to Ireland, but could we have a look at maybe where do Irish people want to go?
Sure. So again, this is so interesting. This report is, I keep saying this, but it is incredibly interesting. So if we take a look at willingness to move abroad, this presents a very, very different picture to the one that we saw in 2018. So Ireland is absolutely in sync with the rest of the world here, with 47% of workers saying they'd be willing to move abroad, compared to 60% in 2018. The global number for this is 50%. So willingness to move abroad globally has dropped by 14 percentage points since 2018. And this is undoubtedly due to the global restrictions due to the pandemic. It's safe to say that the allure of working abroad has definitely lost its appeal, and even more so for those in Ireland. But it is worth noting that the young, and when we say the young in this, we're categorizing those as kind of under the age of 30. And the highly educated, meaning those who have a doctorate or higher, they're more interested in working abroad. And here we can see that 69% of young people in Ireland are saying they'd be willing to move abroad, and then 49% of the highly educated. So this is certainly something that Irish employers need to be mindful of moving forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's fallen for Irish people, but it seems to be a similar trend worldwide, perhaps COVID related.
Absolutely, without a doubt. I think the closure of borders, just the risk with traveling, and how difficult it is. If you've actually traveled during this pandemic, it's very, very difficult. So it's really not surprising at all to see this. And then if we take a step further, we can look at which professions in Ireland want to move abroad. So let me explain this slide, because it's very busy. The blue on the slide indicates the willingness to work abroad, and the green/yellow, depending on what colour is appearing on your screens today, shows a lack of willing to move abroad. So the professions who are most keen on working abroad are those in digitisation and automation, students, science and research, customer services, IT and tech, along with healthcare, and those not working. So if we refer back to the earlier slide, we know that these candidates are highly educated. So the key message here is that the most fluid workers and those who are willing to work abroad are those who fit into core sectors with skills shortages. So there's a real risk of brain drain for all countries, including Ireland. Because if that talent does choose to relocate, then they're gone. That talent has left your shores. But then on the flip side of this, you've got workers in social care and finance, who are less willing to work abroad. So that's good, because again, there's big skills shortages in those sectors too.
There's a lot of data on that slide, Kate, so thanks very much for summarising it so well.
No problem. So we know that 47% of Irish workers are willing to move abroad, and they predominantly fall into digitisation, automation, science, and the tech professions. But where do they want to work? So Irish workers would choose the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, and Germany as their destinations of choice. Some surprises here, with Spain increasing in popularity and Italy now appearing in the top 10. And this really shows that preferences within Europe are slightly different to the global view as a whole, because Spain and Italy are not in the global top 10 anymore. So this is really interesting and surprising.
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's not a surprise that English-speaking countries are dominating in the top 10. And again, despite Brexit, the UK coming in at number 1. And I suppose you can look at it as kind of new opportunities for the Irish in the UK ahead of their EU counterparts.
Absolutely.
So now maybe let's explore the area of remote working. Kate, this is a new area of research, isn't it? Driven by the pandemic, obviously.
Yeah, so it's such a hot topic at the moment, and I think it's fair to say we're standing at the gateway to a new world of work. And companies really now need to be thinking and asking themselves, are we office first? Are we hybrid? Are we remote first? Because these are really important questions, and we know from this research it's an incredibly important topic to candidates now.
So it appears that 66% of Irish people are willing to work in Ireland, but remotely for a foreign employer. A new COVID phenomenon? I mean, how can recruiters potentially use this information?
So we currently have a situation where we know borders are closed for most, and workers have been forced to work remotely. And for many, this has opened up new opportunities for them, and the same for employers. So you have to think, why would I get up and relocate and move abroad when I can effectively sell my services to the highest bidder anywhere in the world? And what better way to attract key talent to make your organization more diverse when you can now potentially hire anyone anywhere in the world? Virtual mobility has an understandable appeal, and it's definitely here to stay. This is great news for employers outside of Ireland who want to attract Irish talent, but perhaps it's not such good news for Irish employers.
No, I wouldn't think so as well, given the highly educated workforce here. It wouldn't be a good thing. So then on this slide, we see then that Irish people are more willing to consider a remote employer than workers around the world. Why is that? Is it the flexibility, do you think? Are they maybe more tech savvy, so they're more comfortable with the concept? Or is it that there's worse commutes or more expensive housing than other workers?
So this is a really interesting phenomenon, And it may have something to do with the fact that Ireland, along with Denmark, Finland, for example, they were one of the first countries who adopted remote working the quickest in the knowledge work and the digital space. And Ireland has actually had one of the highest home working adoption rates in the world. So perhaps Irish workers are just more comfortable with this setup and more open to the opportunity that international remote work can offer. So yeah, Orla, I would say they're definitely more tech savvy and just more comfortable with the setup. And clearly the infrastructure in Ireland is such that it allows for this. So it's I would say that definitely the Irish are more comfortable and experienced in the workings of the home office and want to have that moving forward. And finally, so when we're thinking of remote employment and what countries Irish workers would most likely work remotely for, the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, and Germany are top of the list. So employers in these countries have a very keen workforce in Ireland ready to work remotely for them. And then on the other side of the coin, Irish employers have a talent pool of candidates in the UK, India, US, Spain, and Italy who would be willing to work remotely in their countries for an Irish employer. So I think these are great insights here for employers. If I'm an Irish business struggling to find talent locally, I know what my target markets are and could be for remote hiring. So I could potentially focus my efforts on those countries, and vice versa for employees outside of Ireland who are looking for that highly educated Irish workforce.
So I suppose, Kate, instead of the war for talent, it's now the global war for talent.
Absolutely, the virtual global war for talent.
So Kate, maybe we'll start wrapping up your key takeaways, and we'll move on then to the Q&A. So remote working is clearly here for the long term. Sought after talent want to come to Ireland. Ireland-based companies more than ever now have the opportunity to attract talent from overseas through international remote hiring. And countries who've successfully managed the impact of COVID-19 are very attractive to talent. And finally, there is a risk of people moving abroad as they aren't satisfied with the opportunities that Ireland can offer them. So we do have a few questions that have come in on our Q&A panel on the side there, for anybody else who wants to input questions. Maybe I'll start with this one, Kate. What do you think is the biggest takeaway from this data?
Wow, there's so much. I would say the fact that remote work is here to stay, and it's featured so prominently in our lives for the last 12 months now, and it's going to be a part of our DNA moving forward. Employers need to really consider, what role remote work plays in their setup, and then how they communicate this to candidates. And then on the other side of that, thinking about, if you are hiring internationally, hiring somebody, remotely and internationally, how are you set up for that? Are you ready for that? Do you have the policies in place to deal with that? So I think all the areas kind of around remote work, and then thinking of well-being of your staff, having your leaders in your business being able to manage a remote workforce, I think is really key. So I think the whole remote topic and everything that kind of encompasses that, I think it's really important. And we know from this data that it's critically important to candidates.
Thanks, Kate. Another one here is, can we get drill down information about where to find professionals? For example, if I need a software developer, where am I likely to find one?
Absolutely. So we have, oh, I can't even begin to tell you how much data we have. It's such a big survey across so many people. Obviously, you saw the number of respondents. So I'd say the best thing to do in this instance is speak to your account manager at Irish Jobs, and then they can work with our team at the network to drill down and get the specific data and information that you're looking for. But that's what it's there for. This is a tool to help recruiters to recruit all over the world. So we're more than happy to kind of drill down further into particular locations and segments to help our customers.
That's great. Thanks for that, Kate. And as you say, such a huge number of people that responded to their survey, over 200,000. So yeah, we'll, as you said, just reach out to your account manager in Irish Jobs or international at IrishJobs.ie. We'll take another question here, Kate, if you've a time to answer this one for us. So how do you see this research being used by recruiters?
Oh, that's a good question. I think for me, I hope that this research just gives recruiters just food for thought when thinking about recruiting in this new landscape. We've got a very, very different working landscape, and as we see kind of more rollout of the vaccinations across our planet, we'll start to see restrictions being eased, and we'll start seeing more movement of people, and then employers will start recruiting again. And it's really important to think about candidates and this new world of work and how that impacts them. I think employee engagement has never been so important as it is right now, and I think this report will just shows recruiters what really matters to workers, and then how you can use that data then when you want to attract candidates. I don't want to give too much away here today, otherwise I'll get in lots of trouble, but in report number 2 and 3, that gives you kind of further insight into what candidates really want and what's important in the world of work. And I think we can all say individually our preferences have definitely changed. We've all kind of got used to working in a certain way now, and what people place importance on now is very different to what they placed importance on in 2018. And I hope employers take that on board, and just really think about that employee engagement, and then how they communicate to potential workers so that they can bring in great talent into their business and then hopefully retain it for the long term.
So I think, look, we'll all be looking forward to seeing reports 2 and 3, Kate. Thanks for that. So maybe just to wrap up and say, look, some really fascinating insights this morning from the report. And thank you so much for taking the time to share these insights with us this morning. I hope everyone who's joined us on our webinar had something to take away from it. And again, just a reminder that if anybody would like a copy of the report or would like to know how Irish Jobs can help you attract international talent, please reach out to your account manager or email international@IrishJobs.ie.
Thanks very much, Orla, and thank you to Irish Jobs.